Hey there everyone, welcome to the inaugural episode of the Shadowmage Tutor, where we study Magic the Gathering decks and strategies. Today, we're going to be covering one of the baseline strategies from the modern format, a deck affectionately referred to as Red Deck Wins. And it gets away with the name too, because it does. I consider the deck one of the baseline strategies of Modern because it doesn't offer a ton of interaction, but it does offer a pretty fast clock. Red decks have been popular staples in almost every Magic format, and they're usually pretty good barometers for how fast a format is. If I brew a new deck and it can't hang with the red deck, that's a pretty sure sign that I need to make some changes. Red's best traits are usually direct damage and cheap creatures, and today's deck is no different. Let's take a peek at the list. First up, we've got the creatures. These little guys are the build around me portions of the deck. Without them, the deck wouldn't exist. We have Monastery Swiftspear, a hasty 1/2 body with prowess, meaning it gets bigger every time I cast a non-creature spell. Literally half the deck is made up of non-creatures, so that's going to happen a lot. We've also got Swifty's slower cousin, Soulscar Mage. Haste makes Swifty the better option in our aggressive deck, but don't sleep on the Soulscar's ability to put -1/-1 counters on creatures. We play a lot of burn, and they can be used as tremendous combat tricks when Soulscar is in play. The last creature is Abbot of Carolkeep. He costs 2 mana and he doesn't have haste, so he's not my favorite critter in the list, but the card advantage potential from his Enter the Battlefield trigger is useful in a deck that comes out fast and wants to maintain pressure. Other creatures you might see in this deck include Runaway Steamkin, Blister Coil Weird, Kiln Fiend if you want to get really aggressive, and Bedlam Reveler. Reveler in particular was a staple and in many ways the centerpiece of this strategy for a long time, since it lets us draw a ton of cards. But that recently changed. We'll talk about why in a bit. Next, we've got the Burn package. These spells, when combined with our creatures, accelerates us into a blisteringly fast clock, which punishes any slow or weak draws our opponents have. There's Lightning Bolt, probably the most popularly played MTG card in existence, hits anything at any speed, 3 damage, 1 mana, 0 complaints, mwah! Call me. We've also got Lava Spike. A sorcery with only one viable target is as straightforward and inflexible as it gets, but the rate is absurd. 3 damage, 1 mana, 0 complaints. The fact that people happily play this tells you just how good Lightning Bolt is. Seriously, call me. There's also one of my old favorites, Lava Dart. I remember back when this guy came out in Judgment, which tells you just how long I've been playing this game, and I remember trying to find a home for this guy. It didn't really happen, but these days it's really good. Lava Dart is a solid removal spell in a format with lots of 1 toughness creatures. And, with 1 or more prowess creatures in play, casting it and then flashing it back is a monster rate that makes opponents crispy in very short order. Sacrificing a mountain is a steep price, but not when it means you win. Last on our list of burn spells, there's another golden oldie, Seal of Fire. This is a brand new addition to the deck. The rate of 2 damage on 1 mana is pretty meh, which is why it wasn't included before, but the recent addition of Lurrus of the Dream Den has changed many things in the format, let alone this deck. We'll cover Lurrus in a little while, but he's the reason this card is here. The last group of spells in the deck is the Card Drawing Suite. In this deck, Manamorphose is like a free cycling spell, which also makes our guys bigger. Don't forget that it also helps us cast Lurrus in a pinch if we don't have the white mana. Mishra's Bauble is another free cycle through our deck while triggering prowess. Its synergy with Lurrus is quickly becoming the backbone of the modern format. And Mishra's Bauble, when paired with Manamorphose, effectively makes our deck 52 cards rather than 60, which is a massive advantage. Crash Through serves as a multi-purpose spell, increasing our prowess count, helping us cycle through our deck, and that Trample clause is extremely relevant in a format filled with blockers. Lastly, we have Light Up the Stage, pure gas, people. The spectacle cost is easy to achieve in a deck filled with 1-mana burn spells and cheap creatures. This is the card that keeps the gas in the tank. One quick rule of thumb with this card, it is usually correct to play any lands or spells this card hits first, so you don't lose out on the card advantage. You might have noticed we have a light land count in this deck, 18 lands to be precise, which is due to the fact that we are so low to the ground. Nothing costs more than 2 mana, unless you count Light Up the Stage, and of course we usually cast that for its 1 mana spectacle cost. We only have 6 mountains to sacrifice to Lava Dart, which feels light, but we have 4 virtual mountains in the form of Scalding Tarn. Of course, Tarn can be substituted for the other red fetch lands, and it won't affect the mana base in any meaningful way. Deck builders recently started adding Sacred Foundry, Sunbaked Canyon, and Inspiring Vantage to the deck's mana base now that we have added Lurrus to the deck. And just who is this Lurrus guy I keep jabbering on about? Well, we have to delve into the sideboard to find out. The companion mechanic is one of the most busted mechanics to come out in years. As long as we meet Lurrus's companion deck building requirement, he is our companion, meaning we can cast him from outside of the game as if he is in our hand. And what is his companion requirement? Do we have to give up our firstborn child, donate a kidney, listen to Nickelback? Nope, we just can't play permanents in our deck that cost more than 2 mana. Well, that's not a problem. We had to axe Bedlam Reveler to make it happen, but we make up for the loss of card advantage from Reveler with Lurrus's card advantage. He gives us 8 card opening hands, which is amazing, but the text on him, casting permanents from your graveyard, is absurd. Once per turn you can draw an extra card with Mishra's Bauble, or recast one of your dead creatures, and Seal of Fire looks way better when you can recast it once per turn. Not to mention, the lifelink on Lurrus is nothing to sneeze at in a format where everyone comes at you pretty hard. Lurrus has completely transformed the deck. In the sideboard, we now play 3 Tormod's Crypt, because recasting them every turn with Lurrus against a graveyard strategy is bonkers. And with Lurrus being omnipresent in the format, everything is a graveyard strategy these days. We even play 1 Pyrite Spellbomb in the board so that we can recur it with Lurrus. The board also contains Wear and Tear, Abrade, and Path to Exile as removal for Modern's various problems. We round out the sideboard with 4 core Firewalkers in order to trump the mirror match. Remember when I said this was a popular deck? Yeah, you better be prepared for the mirror. Notably, the Pyrite Spellbomb kills the Firewalker and should be brought in for the mirror. Some people play Dragon's Claw instead of the Firewalker, so don't forget to board in your Abrades. They aren't dead cards even if they don't play the Claw, since you can always aim it at their critters. So that's the deck. Would I play it? Well, I'm a blue mage, but abso-freaking-lutely. I don't mind selling my soul for wins. We don't have a lot of interaction for the combo matchups, but the deck always has a fighting chance. If your opponent stumbles at all, they will be punished severely. Now let's take a look at a trial hand before heading into a few games with it. Welcome to our sample hand for Red Deck Wins. We're using the website untap.in. It's great for playtesting and theory crafting. Without further ado, let's see what we've got for an opener. Make these guys a little bigger. I'm an old man, I can't see very well. Alright, so we've got... That's a pretty darn good hand. 2 lands, that's about as perfect as you can ask for in this archetype. I've got the 1 creature. Second one's usually pretty solid to have, but man, I've got a little bit of everything in that opener right here. I'm going to move this guy over here, and I think we're just going to go ahead and keep this guy. It'd be a snap keep in my view. Alright, so we're going to crack Scalding Tarn first, take our medicine, look for our shock land so that when we do get to that 3rd land, we can cast Lurrus when combined with our Sunbaked Canyon. We're going to take 2 and cast that Swift Spear and get in there and poke them for 1. Alright, then untap, draw for the turn. Alright, another guy, that's pretty good. That's pretty darn good. I think we are going to, if I math this out, we have got a really big turn 3 on deck here. If we simply drop the Soulscar Mage, I think maybe it's correct to use the Bauble on this turn. Ends up minimizing the amount of damage that we can do in the long run, but I like the idea of gaining extra information about our opponent's deck. And I like the idea of keeping that stream of cards going because we've got a lot of cantrips in our hand right now. So before we do anything else, I always like to lead with something like the Bauble so that if my opponent's going to have any removal for this Swift Spear, they are forced to make a decision knowing that I have the Soulscar Mage. If I play the Mage before the attack, that gives them more information. They can respond to what I'm doing. You know what? You guys know how to play Magic, right? I don't need to explain that to you, do I? Alright, so we're going to crack that Mishra's Bauble, and we're going to see that they have whatever in the world they have. We've got a prowess trigger on the stack here. We'll use that 1 counter to account for all the prowess triggers for all the creatures. This guy's a 2/3. We poke him for 2. They're at 17. And Soulscar Mage comes down. Alright. I think that's what we're going to want to do for this turn. On their turn, we will have drawn another card, and that card's a light up the stage. That's, of course, from the Mishra's Bauble trigger. Alright, we untap, turn 3. Oh, man, that is hot stuff right there. We really, really wanted to hit that land. So, we're going to start our turn with Manamorphose, and this is really, it's hard to say what the proper play is. Let's remove, well, I guess we're at 1 prowess trigger now with the Monastery Swift Spear and the Soulscar Mage. This is really difficult to know exactly what we would do. For the purpose of gold fishing, I think it's correct. We're just going to try to make this deck win as fast as possible, assuming there's no resistance, but we do have the option this turn of casting Lurrus and then recasting Mishra's Bauble from our graveyard, which is just massive card advantage. But as I say, for the sake of simply showing how fast this deck can be, we're going to assume that we're going to just aim burn spells at their face. So we're going to cast the Manamorphose for 2 red mana rather than the white mana that we might have used for Lurrus. That's going to give us our prowess triggers on these fellas, and we're going to draw a card from Manamorphose, another land. That's alright, I guess. It's not my favorite draw, but that's alright. We will use 1 of the red mana from Manamorphose for Lightning Bolt at their face. Alright, and they would have been at 17, now down to 14 with the Lightning Bolt, and that sets up our Spectacle cost here on Light Up the Stage. So when I use that, let's see what the top 2 of my deck happen to be. Alright, so now, rather than cast the Crash Through from my hand, I like the idea. Oh, we've got to make sure to get those spectacles or those prowess triggers rather going. Alright. we're going to cast this crash through that's out of the game with light up the stage. So I'm going to take my medicine. I'm at 16. That's one thing you're going to notice about this deck. It is quite good at killing itself as well, so you really do have to make sure that you kill them rather quickly. Alright, so that crash through is going to prowess us once again. So they are at 14. We bash in there for 8. That knocks them down to 6. We've still got this Soul Scar Mage on deck for the next turn with light up the stage. We untap on turn 4. Draw our card for the turn. Oh man, just gas. Just gas. Let's reset our prowess triggers here. We're going to drop our land for the turn. Of course, we have access to Lurrus if we needed to cast him. He's just sitting in our sideboard here. I've got access to him somewhere. Hey, there he is. There's Lurrus just lurking around in the sideboard. I think, if I had a Seal of Fire, maybe I'd consider casting him this turn, but rather than that, let's just... Oh, you know what? I might. Let's just do it. We're just going to show him off. We're going to cast the Monastery Swiftspear. We're going to tap our lands, take our medicine. In comes Lurrus from out of the game. Really not fair, is it? And then, hey, we've got access to Mishra's Bauble. That's going to prowess these guys. We're going to activate that fella to see what's on top of their deck, and we will be able to draw another card. And I'm not going to get that Soulscar Mage. He's going to remain in exile. He's lost to us, but they are very crispy at this turn, and I've got all kinds of card advantage, all kinds of gas still coming my way. So on their turn, I would have drawn another card. I mean, they're in big trouble at this point. So that is our sample hand for Red Deck Wins. One of my favorite decks in the format right now. Even prior to the printing of Lurrus, this was, I think, one of the top decks. And the nice thing about it is actually relatively friendly to your wallet. A lot of the cards in the deck, other than the lands, really aren't that expensive. Lurrus himself has a price tag at the moment of right around $20, but you only need one of him, so that's not too bad. The mana base is a little expensive, especially if you use the Scalding Tarns. You don't have to, as I mentioned in the primer. I think you could probably get this thing for a couple $100, which is really not too bad for a modern deck. And as you can see, it's got a pretty fast clock. There's a lot of different plays that we could have made with this sample hand. Without having an opponent, it's hard to know what the proper plays would have been. But yeah, I really like it. I strongly recommend the deck.
I think Lurrus has greatly improved the deck, but I want to know what you think. Is Red Deck Wins better off with Lurrus now, or do you prefer the Bedlam Reveler build? Leave your thoughts in the comments and let's talk some MTG.